The Crusades and the Christianization of the Middle East. Introduction. A collision of worlds. The Crusades were among the most transformative and contentious events of the medieval world, leaving an indelible mark on both Europe and the Middle East. While the stated aim of these campaigns was the liberation of Jerusalem and other sacred sites, they also sought to expand Christendom's influence and establish a permanent Christian presence in the Holy Land. The process of Christianization, however, was neither straightforward nor uniform. It was a complex interplay of conquest, settlement, and cultural exchange, shaped by the ambitions of Crusader leaders, the resilience of local populations, and the broader currents of history. This essay explores the multifaceted nature of Christianization in the Middle East during the Crusades, focusing on the establishment of Crusader states, the interaction between Latin Christians and local communities, and the enduring legacy of this encounter. Chapter 1. The establishment of the Crusader states. The First Crusade, 1096 to 1099, culminated in the dramatic conquest of Jerusalem, an event that reverberated across Christendom and the Islamic world. In its wake, the Crusaders established a series of states, known as the Latin East, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch, and the County of Tripoli. These states served as footholds for the Christianization of the region, governed by Latin Christian rulers who sought to impose their faith and culture on a predominantly Muslim and Eastern Christian population. A fictional perspective. Sir William of Anjou, a fictional knight who settled in the newly established Kingdom of Jerusalem, offers a lens through which to explore this process. William was among the knights who marched under Godfrey of Bouillon and witnessed the horrors of the siege of Jerusalem. Like many of his comrades, he saw the conquest as divinely ordained and viewed the Middle East as a land ripe for Christian transformation. When we entered the holy city, William later recounted, it was as if heaven itself had opened to us. The streets ran red with the blood of the infidel, and yet I felt only the light of God guiding our swords. Upon settling in Jerusalem, William was granted a parcel of land outside the city walls. His mandate was clear: to govern in the name of Christ and to ensure the spread of Latin Christianity among the local population. Churches were built, monasteries founded, and Western liturgical practices introduced. Yet, William soon discovered that the task of Christianization was fraught with challenges. Chapter 2. Encounters with the local population. The Middle East during the Crusades was a mosaic of religious and ethnic communities, including Muslims, Jews, Eastern Christians, such as Greek Orthodox, Syriac Christians, and Armenians, and others. While the Crusaders sought to establish Latin Christianity as the dominant faith, they were often forced to coexist with these diverse groups. A fictional encounter. One day, while overseeing the construction of a church, William encountered a Syriac Christian named Elias, who approached him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Elias spoke of the deep-rooted Christian traditions in the region, traditions that predated the Latin Church by centuries. "Your ways are not our ways," Elias said, gesturing to the Latin priests who had accompanied William. "We worship the same Christ, yet you treat us as strangers in our own land." William was taken aback. He had assumed that all Christians would welcome the Crusaders as liberators. Yet, he quickly realized that the imposition of Latin practices often alienated local Christians, who viewed the Crusaders as conquerors rather than saviors. This encounter marked a turning point for William. He began to advocate for greater tolerance and cooperation with local Christian communities, recognizing that the success of the Crusader states depended on forging alliances rather than enforcing uniformity. Chapter 3. The role of the Church in Christianization. The Latin Church played a central role in the Christianization of the Middle East, establishing dioceses, appointing bishops, and introducing Western monastic orders. The Church also sought to convert Muslims and Jews, though these efforts were often met with resistance. In many cases, Christianization took the form of institutional dominance rather than widespread conversion. The establishment of religious institutions was accompanied by the importation of Western architectural styles. The construction of grand cathedrals, such as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, served as visible symbols of Latin Christianity's presence in the region. These structures not only facilitated worship but also reinforced the Crusaders' claim to the land as a Christian domain. Chapter 4: Cultural Exchange and Syncretism. Despite the Crusaders' efforts to impose their faith and culture, the process of Christianization was shaped by a dynamic exchange between Latin Christians and local populations. This exchange was evident in areas such as art, architecture, and daily life, where Crusaders adopted elements of Middle Eastern culture even as they sought to assert their own. A fictional reflection. William, now an older man, reflected on how his household had changed over the years. His wife, a Frankish noblewoman, had died during childbirth, and he had remarried a local Christian woman named Miriam. Through her, he had come to appreciate the richness of Eastern Christian traditions, from their hymns to their iconography. "Our home is neither wholly Latin nor wholly Eastern," William remarked to a visiting knight. "It is something in between, a reflection of this land and its many peoples." This blending of cultures was not unique to William. Across the Crusader states, similar patterns of syncretism emerged, illustrating the complexities of Christianization in a region marked by deep historical and cultural diversity. Chapter 5: The Resistance to Christianization. The process of Christianization was not uncontested. Muslim resistance to the Crusader presence was both military and cultural, culminating in figures like Saladin, who emerged as a unifying force against the Latin states. The reconquest of Jerusalem by Saladin in 1187 was a turning point, signaling the limits of the Crusaders' ambitions and the resilience of Islamic civilization. Even within the Crusader states, tensions between Latin Christians and local populations persisted. Efforts to enforce religious conformity often backfired, leading to resentment and, in some cases, open rebellion. Chapter 6: The Enduring Legacy. The Crusades ultimately failed to secure a lasting Christian dominance in the Middle East. By the late 13th century, the Latin states had been dismantled, and the region returned to Muslim control. Yet, the legacy of the Crusades and their Christianization efforts endured in various ways. Religious orders and institutions. The Crusades gave rise to enduring institutions such as the Knights Hospitaller and the Knights Templar, which continued to play significant roles in European and Mediterranean history. Cultural exchange. The interaction between Crusaders and local populations enriched both Europe and the Middle East, contributing to the transmission of knowledge, art, and ideas. A divided memory. For Christians, the Crusades became a symbol of devotion and sacrifice. For Muslims, a reminder of foreign aggression. These contrasting memories have. Chapter 7: The Role of Religious Orders in Christianization. Among the most enduring symbols of the Crusades were the military and religious orders, such as the Knights Hospitaller, Knights Templar, and the Teutonic Knights. These organizations were not only pivotal in defending the Crusader states but also instrumental in the broader process of Christianization. They established fortified monasteries, hospitals, and churches, creating a visible Latin Christian presence in the Holy Land. The Hospitallers, in particular, focused on providing care for pilgrims and the sick, embodying the ideal of Christian charity. In contrast, the Templars were more militaristic, tasked with protecting the roads and ensuring the safety of pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. These orders became bastions of Latin Christian influence, blending the roles of warrior, monk, and missionary. A fictional element. Sir William of Anjou, having spent his later years working alongside the Hospitallers, saw firsthand the impact of their mission. In the bustling streets of Acre, he helped establish a hospital that served not only Latin Christians but also local Muslims and Jews. This act of inclusivity, while controversial among some of his fellow Crusaders, reflected the practical realities of life in the Crusader states. One evening, William spoke to Brother Alaric, a Hospitaller surgeon who had treated patients of all faiths. "We are called to serve all who are in need," Alaric explained. "To see the suffering of another and turn away. Can we truly call that Christian?" William nodded, understanding that true Christianization was not about imposing beliefs, but about embodying Christ's teachings of love and compassion. Chapter 8: Resistance and Resilience. The Christianization of the Middle East faced significant resistance, particularly from the Muslim majority. While the initial Crusader conquests were met with shock and disarray among Muslim leaders, the 12th century saw the rise of organized resistance. Figures like Nur ad-Din and Saladin rallied Muslim forces, not only reclaiming lost territories but also fostering a sense of religious and cultural unity among their followers.